Your Fujifilm X-S20 has a lot of great autofocus and manual focus tools to help you get sharper photos, but it does take some practice and knowledge of those systems to be able to use them efficiently. So this video is going to take you through the autofocus and manual focus techniques. It's from a free preview for my XS20 tutorial course. Takes you through all of the menu setups, how to use the focus and exposure modes. It contains videos and text that you can go back to and re-watch and reread anytime you need to. There are PDF downloads that you can reference offline, and even a quiz at the end to assess your understanding of this camera. You can watch even more free previews at photocourses.link/XS20. And if you do want to sign up for that full course, use the code TUBE20 for 20% off. So here's that video lesson for the autofocus and manual focus techniques in the Fujifilm X-S20. Before we learn about our exposure modes, I want to spend some time going over how to focus using this camera. We're going to start by looking at single shot autofocus, or AFS. If you're photographing stationary subjects or subjects that are moving around but they're not changing the distance to you, so they're not moving towards you or away from you, then single shot autofocus is the mode that you're going to want to be in. In single shot autofocus, when you command autofocus, the camera is going to search for a focus lock. Once it gets the focus lock, it's done working. It's not going to try to figure out the autofocus anymore, no matter how long you keep that shutter button pressed. So you put your focus area over your subject, press the shutter button halfway, confirm the focus lock, and then press the shutter button all the way to make the photo. To get into single shot autofocus, go into your AF/MF setting menu and set focus mode to AFS. When you're in single shot autofocus, you're going to verify that by looking for AFS in the lower left corner of the display. Note that if you're using the large indicators mode, you won't see this indication and your screen is going to look vastly different. To change your AF mode, or the focus area size, you can go into your AF/MF setting menu and then select AF mode. You can shortcut to this menu by programming a custom function control to AF mode, and we'll look at how to customize our controls in an upcoming video. But if you set your AF mode in the AF/MF setting menu to all, as I suggested earlier, you can set your autofocus mode while shooting just by tilting the joystick and then using the command dial to cycle through the different AF modes and sizes. This is available when Edit Focus Area is set for the tilt function in the focus lever setting menu. Go ahead and set wide. That's a pretty good starting point using the wide autofocus area. You'll know that you're in wide autofocus area by seeing the white hash marks around the corners of the display. When you press the shutter button halfway to command autofocus, you'll verify that you have an autofocus lock by seeing green squares over the areas where the camera has decided to focus. You'll also see a green circle in the lower left corner of the display where AFS was, and if you have your AF beep volume turned up, you'll also hear the autofocus beep confirmation to let you know that you have a lock. A bad lock is indicated by a red AF square with the exclamation point and AF on the display, and in the lower left corner of the display, you'll see a blinking white dot. If you have a bad autofocus lock, reasons for that could be that there's not enough light to get autofocus, there's not enough contrast to detect any kind of contrast for autofocus, or you may be too close to the subject. So search for an area with better contrast, more light, or back away from the subject. So now go ahead and try this out for yourself. Set the focus mode to AFS, set the AF mode to wide, point your camera at something, press the shutter halfway, verify the focus lock, and then press the shutter all the way to capture the photo. When you did that, were the green squares over your subject, over the area that you wanted to focus on? I hope so, but sometimes wide is not discerning enough. Sometimes you need more precise control over choosing the entire screen for your focus. So in these situations, the zone and single point autofocus modes are a lot better to give you more precise control. The zone area takes up approximately 1/4 to 1/2 the screen. You can change the size of that zone using the command dial and move it around the screen with a joystick. This is best if you have a stationary or semi-stationary subject in one portion of the display. And then you have single point, which gives you a really small point for better precision in choosing where to focus, like on an eye. And again, you can move the single point around the screen and set different sizes. To get into any of these autofocus modes, you can go into the AF mode menu and select zone or single point. To change the sizes of these AF modes, you then go into the AF/MF setting menu and select focus area. Or, with all selected for the AF mode, you can tilt the joystick to get to the edit screen and then use the command dial to change the size and the joystick to move your focus point around the screen to where you want it. That's if edit is set for the focus lever tilt setting. Press OK to save it. Now try this out for yourself. Go into either the zone or single point autofocus mode, change the size of that zone or single point, move it around the screen to where you want to focus. Press the shutter button halfway, verify the focus lock, and then press the shutter all the way to capture the photo. The next focus mode is continuous autofocus, or AFC. This is best when you're photographing moving subjects, especially subjects that are changing the distance between you and them. The distance to your subject is very important for accurate focus, so if that's changing, we want our autofocus solution to be updating constantly. And especially if you're doing burst shooting, so you're taking a sequence of photos all at once, AFC will keep up with that and make sure that the autofocus is continually updating as you're pressing the shutter button. To get into this burst mode, press Drive and select CL or CH. Don't forget to set your drive back to S for a single shot when you're done with the burst mode. To get into AFC, go into your AF/MF setting menu and set focus mode to AFC. When you're in continuous autofocus, you're going to verify that by looking for AFC in the lower left corner of the display. The autofocus modes in continuous autofocus work more or less the same as in single shot autofocus. Zone is good for a subject that is either approaching you or going away from you, staying in the same portion of the screen. Single point is very difficult to use if you're using AFC to track a moving subject, trying to keep that little point on the subject. Wide in AFC is called tracking, and when you're in tracking, you'll see a small box in the center of the screen that you can move around with a joystick. This is where the autofocus system is going to start tracking a subject. So you put this box over your subject, press the shutter button halfway, and the camera will attempt to track that object as it moves or as you move the camera. So this is a much more dynamic autofocus mode where that focus point will update with where your subject moves, whereas the other autofocus modes stay in the same location on the screen. And a note of caution about tracking, while the technology is quite impressive, it sometimes does make errors, so beware of that. While using continuous autofocus, you'll see parentheses in the lower left of the display with a green dot inside the parentheses when the camera verifies the lock. If face and eye detection is set to anything but off, and the camera recognizes a face or eye, you'll see a white box around that face or eye. If it's set to eye detection but sees only a face, it'll still put a box around the face. Once it sees an eye, it'll put a box around the eye. Once you command autofocus, it will use that face or eye to focus. This works in both single shot and continuous autofocus modes. Just be aware of erroneous locks. Sometimes the camera detects a face or eye that is not there, and it can throw off your focus. I like to keep face and eye detection off unless I know that I'm photographing people. This camera also has a new subject detection feature. Tell the camera what kind of subject you're photographing, and it'll look for that subject in or near your focus area. Let's say you're photographing horses and set it to animal. If it detects an animal but can't make out the animal's face or eye, it'll put a box around the horse and use that to focus. If it detects the head, it'll put a box around the head. And if it detects an eye, it'll put a box around the eye, which is usually where we want to focus when photographing animals. If there are multiple subjects in the scene, use the joystick to move the focus area closer to the subject you want to focus on. In wide tracking mode, with the joystick tilt set to the edit function, tilting the joystick will switch between any subjects detected. The camera will continuously focus on that subject when you command autofocus. This works in both AFS and AFC modes. Face and eye detection will be set to off when subject detection is enabled. If you want more control over your focus, or for whatever reason autofocus just isn't working, you can go into manual focus mode and try focusing yourself. To get into manual focus, set focus mode to MF. When you're in manual focus, you're going to verify that by looking for MF in the lower left corner of the display. Being proficient in manual focus does take some practice. I would encourage everyone to try it out because there are times where manual focus is the better tool to use. Thankfully, Fujifilm gives us some assistance to use to help us achieve an accurate and quicker manual focus. The first one is focus check, where we can zoom in on the point we want to focus on. To activate focus check, push in on the joystick as long as zoom is selected for the push joystick function. You can use the rear command dial to change the magnification level of the zoom, and then use the joystick to move it around the screen. Push in on the joystick again to exit. So go ahead and try this out for yourself. Go into the manual focus mode, activate focus check, use the joystick to move it around to where you want to focus, use the rear command dial to change the magnification, and move the manual focus ring to refine your focus in that area. Push the joystick in to leave focus check, then compose and press the shutter button to make the photo. We also have a manual focus assist mode. Go into the AF/MF setting menu and then look for MF Assist. Digital split image slices the frame into horizontal slices. And when the image is out of focus, those slices will not align with one another. As you bring the image back into focus, now those slices are going to start to align. I recommend setting the monochrome split image here because it's easier to see than color. This mode works best when you have a lot of vertical lines. Because the image is split into horizontal slices, misalignment of vertical lines will be much easier to see. The digital microprism is like digital split image, but on a much smaller scale. So you're going to see this digital prism, and when the image is out of focus, all of those squares are going to be misaligned and very obvious. As you bring the image back into focus, those squares will line up and just sort of disappear. This one's a little bit harder to use, but certainly has an application in certain scenes. Focus Peak Highlight will outline areas that are in focus in a bright color. This mode works great for most all scenes, and you can choose from a couple of different colors here. Just find the color that stands out the best against your subject. So if your subject is red, I probably wouldn't choose a red outline, maybe blue, because blue contrasts against red. You can also choose a sensitivity level. High is going to give you very bold colors, but will outline areas that are maybe not in exact precise focus. Low will be harder to see, but it's only going to outline those areas that are in absolute precise focus. I just use high. And then off turns these modes off. We also have the back autofocus button. If you press the AF on button, it will command autofocus while you are in manual focus mode. Wherever you move that box around the screen, that's where it's going to command autofocus. So you put that box over your subject, and instead of rotating the manual focus ring, press that back autofocus button and you'll get an autofocus lock without ever having left manual focus mode. Make sure that that back autofocus button is assigned to the function AF on, which is the default. And we'll learn how to do that in the final chapter. And then you can set this to behave as either single autofocus or continuous autofocus when you press and hold that button in the instant AF setting found in the AF/MF setting menu. So go ahead and try these techniques out for yourself. Select Focus Peak Highlight for the manual focus assist. Choose a color and a sensitivity level that makes sense. Rotate the manual focus ring until those colors are the boldest and the strongest outlined around your subject. Use Focus Check to zoom in if you need to. Move your focus area around the screen with the joystick, and then command autofocus using the back autofocus button. Compose and make your photo. And those are all of our basic focus tools found in this camera. In the next video, we'll look at all of the exposure modes.